Welcome to the Grand Collaborations, a part of the Grand Podcast. My name is Niels Tudor Winter, and I'm the creator, editor, and host of The Grand. The Grand is now open for business, and I have therefore created the podcast category, The Grand Collaboration, where I will launch podcast collaborations with partners. This podcast episode is a collaboration between the RM Framework project funded by Horizon Europe and The Grand. Research management is a job title that keeps getting more and more solid ground under its feet. From a role with little or no recognition to now being acknowledged by most countries in the EU as a vital role in research organizations. One of the reasons why the research management role has reached this point is because of a dedicated community around Europe that has insisted on shaping the role and demanding that it is taken seriously in the research community. Part of this big job has been done through EU-funded projects that have given the community the opportunity to define, shape, build and connect through the projects like Formation and RM Roadmap. The RM Framework project is the next step in strengthening the role of research managers in Europe. With EU funding, a consortium is now developing a European qualification system for research management. The goal is to standardize education and training programs and create a quality label that makes skills more comparable across countries, ultimately helping to professionalize and improve research management within the European research area. The Grand and RM Framework will over 15 episodes dig into the different parts of the project and follow the development over the next 1.5 years. Here in this 5th episode, it is time to have a look at the pilot concept that will be implemented in the pilot phase of the project. I'm joined by project partner Marcos Gomes from University of Coimbra in Portugal. In this conversation, Marcos takes us through what he calls the engine of the project. The pilots play a vital role in this project to show and demonstrate the flexibility of the research management training handbook developed by the project. Great content. Please enjoy. Welcome to the Grand, the EU funding podcast, and welcome to the RM Framework series of which this program is in, and it's a collaboration between the Grand and the RM Framework project, which is a project that is trying to give some solid ground under the training capacities for research managers. So trying to develop a handbook at some quality standards and also maybe common standards across Europe for what to learn as a research manager. And Marcos, welcome.
Hi, Niels. Thank you.
Now, I made this introduction shorter because sometimes I've been blabbing about when I did this introduction. But this is what it's about. Let's get some common terminologies and common standards across the continent. So sort of putting more and more steady ground under the feet of this profession, right? And we will get shortly back to what we're going to talk about today. But before we do that, can you introduce yourself shortly?
Okay. Again, hello, Niels, and thank you for having me today. And hello, everyone listening. My name is Marcos Gomes. I am a research and innovation manager working at the University of Coimbra, more precisely at the Institute of Interdisciplinary Research. And I have a PhD in neuroscience from the University of Coimbra. Well, I did part of my work at the University of Coimbra as well as at MIT and at the Broad Institute in the United States. And I am currently co-leading with the Vice Rector for Research of the University of Coimbra, the work package 3 of the RM Framework project, which are the pilot tests.
Yeah. And this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the pilots. We're going to talk about, we're not going to talk about fold out one specific pilot, but we're going to talk about the pilot concept that you have introduced or that you have sketched, and that you're going to fold out here in this next months over 2026, as far as I can understand, right?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, exactly.
And just to put 2 lines on that, can you do that?
So, pilot testing is central for the RM framework project. And so, why? When we decided to make pilot testing a central part of this project, was we did it so deliberately. So, we didn't want to do this as an add-on or as a tick box exercise. It is the practical way to validate, to learn from, and to co-create the final outputs. And they are two main closely related reasons for that choice. So first, pilot testing is our primary validation mechanism. So the handbook and associated materials are meant to be usable across many different institutional and national contexts. And they, as been said on previous episodes, they build on excellent predecessor work, notably the RM roadmap, which mapped competences, backgrounds, and the real-world pains and challenges directly voiced by the research management community, and the Europe Commission's RMcomp work that produced a comprehensive and extensive competence framework and learning outcomes. But mapping and compiling, it's only the start point. So for a handbook to be interoperable and genuinely useful, we need to test how it actually works in training, design, and delivery. So the pilot testing, as I mentioned, gives us the practical evidence. It shows us what is clear, what is ambiguous, what is missing, and where different contexts demand adaptation. And so that's the first main reason. And the second is that the pilot testing is the handbook is fundamentally about learning rather than compliance. So we deliberately framed pilots as opportunities to learn from established training providers and from trainees themselves. So the goal is not to impose a single standard on everyone, but rather to be filled with real examples, not to so that the handbook reflects what works. And so our colleagues at ZWM and CHE have spent months assembling the content and creating the runway for the handbook. And pilot testers have been essential partners throughout the process through workshops and meetings. We had the latest one in Budapest in October. And we are still always through ongoing engagement. So those pilots are not thought to be, as we say, like merely tasting sessions. They really are co-design moments. And the pilot feedback will then be fed back to the drafting team to redefine and retest as needed. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's we will go into details as we move into the episode here. But indeed, in short, your approach is that this is something that should be generic. It should be able to be used across the continent in whatever context your tradition or your teaching landscape and framework is for research management.
Yeah, because one of the most important design choices for the pilot testing program was to ensure broad diversity among testers. So, and there are good reasons for that. So research management today, more than ever, is not a narrow or a single function. So it spans a very wide spectrum from that's been far from just pre-award and post-award officers. We are talking about research infrastructure managers, innovation and business development officers, and data stewards, and open science officers. So there are so many hybrid roles right now that merge administration, that merge strategy and external engagement. So these roles that are so diverse and also apply to any type of institution that performs research. We are talking also about private and public universities or research institutions or funding agencies or NGOs or public authorities. So it is key that to reflect this diversity on the pilot test. So selecting pilot testers was therefore very strategic because we chose organizations that with long-standing and reputable training offers and who providers whom trainers and trainees already recognize as useful, so that the experience from the pilots provides a credible and diverse test. Yeah.
Let's just move into digging into this topic. So for the first block we have here, that's why pilot testing is central to the RM framework. So we have a couple of bullets here. The first one here, why did the project choose pilot testing as a core activity? Well, it's almost obvious, but can you please share with us?
So yeah, as I mentioned, it needed to be our primary mechanism for validation, and also we needed to essentially or fundamentally be about learning from the pilot testers. So basically, we have all these predecessor work, as I mentioned, and this has been cumulative work. And I also want to acknowledge the work that, for example, started with RM Roadmap and the National Ambassadors Network that did a lot of listening work locally with their communities. For example, in Portugal, the lead ambassadors that should also be acknowledged, like Tatiana Costa from Alma Science or Luís Silva from the Tech Transfer Office from the University of Coimbra, they compiled the textual nuances and the mapping of the community, and also building on that, RMcomp and Cardea project that also produced this competence architecture. So we are basically now, so previous efforts focus kind of on the how, on the what. And currently, the RM framework is it's mostly looking at, or at least we're building on the how. And we are also building on the engagement and with national and European stakeholders for a long-lasting impact. So the pilot testing needs to reflect on these previous efforts and the handbook reflects that. But the pilot testing is really key to not only look if it's interoperable, if it's useful, but also to make sure that it is a guide with good practices and good examples from what has worked so far across Europe. So that's why you also pick and choose providers that are seen by trainees as a leading or outstanding institutions in those training areas.
That's good. It's also a little special area, right? It has its own little corner, so it's not that it has probably not been that difficult to identify who should be involved. But of course, it's always tricky to put a project together and having the proposal where all ends meet, and to sort of fold it out in the real. Like how is the idea of this something that should be done across the continent? How do we do that in reality? And so each of them, probably your partners out there for pilot, they each have an idea of how to approach it. So it's probably been sort of a puzzle.
So yeah, and we as I mentioned, selecting these partners, these pilot testers, was very strategic because we wanted to reflect the diversity of areas, the diversity of institutions. And so we chose for the first wave universities. Of course, we selected the Technical University of Madrid. In Spain, we selected Corvinus University of Budapest in Hungary. University of Milano Bicocca in Italy. And we also wanted to have other training, other different training providers, for example, a funding agency.
Mhm.
And for that, we chose the Catalonian Agency of Management of University and Research Grants, AGAUR, in Catalonia, Spain, and also a professional network, because there's also professional networks giving trainings in research management. And for that, we chose the Norwegian Association for Research Managers, NARMA, in Norway. So we wanted to, and each of these training providers provides in different areas, pre-award, post-award, research infrastructure, or even different seniorities. We are talking more junior positions, more senior, or even more leaders. And we are also talking about at different stages, more postgraduates. And for example, others are thinking of creating trainings even for at undergrad. So this is selecting these pilot testers was the best way to ensure that we are covering, of course, not all types, but that reflects this diversity of the current scenario in Europe. So it was a way to make sure that the final users for the handbook really see it as something that is useful for any type of approach for a training program.
Yes, and that is indeed the key for a project like this. So making sure, because you want to show the commission first and foremost, the ones that gave you the funding, right? You want to show the commission that this can be rolled out, how this can be rolled out under different circumstances with different institutions, geography, framework context, and so on and so forth. So that's well done. So that's the commission, the one that gave the money. So this is what you want to show, but you also want to the real life, the ones that it really matters for, right? You want to make sure through what you do to pressure test your approach and see for yourself and for the actual real environment out there, the real life, does it work? How is it working? So yeah.
We wanted to make sure that, as I mentioned, that any type of training provider because it also needs to reflect local nuances and local contexts. So we also, because the needs for a research management community in a different European country is different, because they're at different stages, so we wanted to make sure that it accounts for any type of training providers and any type of training approaches to any type of research management areas and needs. So this is a big challenge, of course, but that is why we selected these providers, to make sure that if by the end we are happy with the final product, we are happy with the final handbook, and that the pilot testers provide all these feedback and input through their expertise, their past experience, and even their own feedback while using the handbook. If by the end they're also happy with the final product, we can be sure that we are providing something that, as I normally say, it's not a stone, it's a living document. We are also trying to make sure that it is something that it needs to be organic and evolve throughout time, but also that it's really useful for any type of training provider in Europe to find this the common language, and also because this in the end also helps research managers recognize their careers, and also really making sure that they know their impact on a research performing institution. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's that's sort of well covered. Let's move into the next block on how the pilots they're going to work in practice. So can you share a little bit? How many do you have, and how have you? What are the core principles and so on?
So as I said, the pilot testers are going to be for at least for the first part. We are talking about 3 universities, different parts of Europe. We're also talking about a funding agency and a professional network. And in practice, pilots are going to be very structured and guided. So the common initial concern that we heard from pilot testers was, will you ask us to change our courses to align with the handbook?
Mm-hmm.
And the short answer is no,
Yeah.
because that's not the objective. So pilots are designed to test the handbook's usability and compatibility with the existing practice, and not to enforce uniformity, because that's something that we don't want to. So operationally, each pilot tester receives the draft of the handbook and a guiding document.
Mm-hmm.
So the handbook itself is being developed by our colleagues in Germany in ZWM and CHE, and we are in charge of this guiding document. So this is a set of structured prompts and reflective questions that are designed to focus their review. So as Nicholas from CHE mentioned in the previous episode, 2 chapters are particularly central. So we are talking about the program development guide. That's the how to design a training program from scratch.
Yeah.
And the curricular component method, which connects areas, competences, learning outcomes to job profiles. And this is how it aids on creating the curricular, concrete curricular units. So pilot tests are asked to review the entire handbook, but we give special attention to these core chapters. So they're asked to use the handbook in order to recreate their current training offers, and to give us feedback if the outcome would be different or not, if it's improved or not, and make this process practical and reflective. We ask pilot testers to go through the handbook together with the guiding documents, so that they keep almost like a structured learning diary. So where they record their usability issues, if they skip tests and why did they skip tests, the steps, if they created their own process along the way, and provide their own examples of missing materials, suggestions. And that diary is really the key data source because it captures immediate and contextualized reactions. And in the end, we also follow by 101 meetings with the pilot testers, because to go a little bit through further in the data they provided, and also to collect additional feedback. And in the end, all feedback, diaries and meeting notes are compiled and then sent back to the drafting team at ZWM and CHE in Germany, for them to make sure that we make the appropriate changes to the document. Yeah.
And here, because we've been talking a lot about, also in the previous 4 episodes, we talk a lot about systems and frameworks and school systems and so on. But the thing is, and here it comes down to, it's actually human psychology, right? Because it comes down to the individual trainer and how they train. They are, of course, part of a framework and a system and all that, and a teaching tradition and what they're used to do and but it's also, it's at the end of the day, it's in a classroom with a trainer that is doing things in a specific way. So this is so what you did here was to take it down on the individual level to make sure that the trainer is the square root in seeing if all this is working in the frame that that her or he is operating within.
Yeah, because in the end, so we are making sure that one of the approaches is to look this from the job profile, so and build this on upward. So from the job profile to back to the beginning, making sure that in the end, trainees really find that these training opportunities are really useful for them when they take these courses by the end. So have they found the right materials, the right resources, the right competences, the right learning outcomes from the courses that they take. And so to make sure of that, that's why we also selected courses that so far have been proven by trainees, by students, that they find it useful. And so we wanted to understand that if by using this handbook, if by using these the different processes, methodology that the handbook proposes, will these trainings be with the outcome would be the same or not of these training courses, or even if they would be improved, because some of them also refer that they also lack improvement in some areas and they wanted to use the handbook for that specific purpose. So if in the end we are able to fulfill that, that's really outstanding. And we make sure that anyone in Europe, if by reading the handbook and using this handbook, really are able to really finding the best approach to their needs. And this starts from literally scratch, as Nicholas mentioned in the previous episode. We are talking about starting even from the concept, from the business model, up to the learning outcomes and the assessment. So this will cover everything from that structured point of view. Yeah.
And it's a nice bridge to the next section here. Key lessons from the pilots. Now, we're not going to talk about what you learned because you haven't done this yet. It's more what you expect. Yeah. So that's of course, yeah, but you have been thinking about this when you wrote the proposal, and so you have an idea. So can you share a little bit about how you expect to use also the feedback?
Yeah, so one of the key things we also expect from the pilot testing, more than of specific feedback related to the different chapters, is more about also the own practical lessons that they have, that they had throughout the years when developing these training programs. So because these practical lessons, these examples, really shape the handbook and the project recommendations. So broadly, they are encouraged to provide good practice suggestions and examples of what worked, but also what didn't work, because there's a lot of pain also that they've seen. Some of these training providers had in the past courses that they created and that they failed. They did one or two editions and they didn't follow up. So we also wanted to make sure that they provide their own examples of things that didn't work when previously developed their own programs. And also, of course, during their interaction with the handbook. So any type of feedback is crucial. And because we want to make sure that this idea that a one size fits all does not work in research management training, because they are talking also about local context and particular needs of the research management community. So we want to make sure that these examples are make it into the final handbook, because that's how people also learn by example. And as I mentioned before, and above all, the pilot process is really about learning from all rather than imposing in the end a top-down standard. So the final document should be a curated, interoperable compilation of existing and novel tools and processes, but with a fresh guidance. So it's meant to provide a common language, as I mentioned, not only for training providers to really design high quality and useful trainings, but also to empower the community to really recognize their own roles, their impact, and policymakers to understand also the importance of these professionals and what still needs to be done in the proper recognition of these professionals and their own careers. Yeah.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, has also been touching this in the other episodes that it might seem a niche thing to cover and dig into and make these standards for training, but at the end of the day, that's how we get a sort of research management profession that we're reliant on training. It's like it's like any education, a carpenter, a lawyer, what it's based on good education at its common standards. So it's very important what you do here. Thanks. Now we have come to the end of this episode. Do you have any some closing remarks? Anything you want to share with the listeners before we some key takeaway or?
If I have to give a single takeaway, it's really that I want to leave to research managers and trainers is that the RM framework project, it's not to be seen almost like an external audit. It's really an investment in your professional practice and in the sustainability and the recognition of research management across Europe. And also I want to thank the core project partners, including ARMA, CHE, and ZWM, and EFTA, and of course the pilot testers, because this has been a tremendous amount of work and their work and contribution has been crucial. And of course, the wider European research management community, because the outstanding engagement and interest that they have been having in the research, in the RM framework project has been tremendous, and it's been really interesting. And also, everyone also here at the University of Coimbra also helping support the project. So these have been intense and exciting months, and there are still many to come, although the project is short compared to other previous projects, which makes it more intense, but more fun also. Mm-hmm. And I'm really grateful for this opportunity and to contribute to such an impactful project. And again, thank you, Niels, for having me today, and to everyone listening.
It's been a pleasure, Marco. Now, for sort of zooming a little bit out, now we've been having some introductory episodes here to sort of fold out what this project is about, dig a little bit into the theoretical part, the state of the art, and we talked about the handbook concept and now the pilot concept. So as I can share with the listeners, as we move on, we will have the next episodes. We will have actual pilots in the studio. So we will cover that over, I think we have planned for 3 episodes with 3 different pilots that we will talk to. So that's going to be very nice. So you can look forward to that. So everything we talked about here, there you will hear in all practicality what they will be doing. So that's that. Thanks for coming around. Dear listeners, thank you for listening to this episode to the end. Go to thegrant.eu. There is a link to the RM Framework series on my front page. And there you can go to the RM Framework site on my site. And on that, You have all the resources there. You have the episodes that has been produced in this collaboration, and you will have links to the project site and the things that they're doing there. So you have all the resources that is connected to this project. You will find from my website. If you think that it's wonderful what I do, if you think that that funding, podcasting and EU funding sounds great, then browse around my site. There's a lot of podcasts there on EU funding. I passed 200 episodes, so it's all corners. Should definitely be something for your corner. So yeah. No, Marco, thanks again.
Thank you, Niels.
Bye.
Bye.
You have been listening to the Grant Collaborations, a part of the Grant podcast. This podcast episode is a collaboration between IRM Framework Project and the Grant. All episodes in this IRM Framework series have their own site on the Grant website. You will find the link to the episode site where you listen to your podcast. On the site for this episode, you'll find a link to Marcos' LinkedIn site and of course a link to the project website. Next episode will be released on the 11th of March with focus on the pilot activities. You can look forward to that. You have been listening to the Grant Collaborations, a part of the Grant podcast.